She needed to take care of her child. She was 19 and she was pregnant.
But you avoiding the facts of the case. Even though that she filed a lawsuit against the state for denying her privileges, but the Supreme Court
Right.
ruled that the Supreme Court ruled that that can't happen because that also be violating her right to travel throughout the states, the
To
land.
receive the benefits that she needs in order to take care of herself and her child.
Yes, but you're missing the argument that the Supreme Court has stated that'll be violating her First Amendment right, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, travel. I don't want you to miss that fact. That's what they ruled.
They said the closest the Supreme Court has come to overturning Shapiro Thomas was in 1995 with Anderson versus Green, California Welfare and Interstate Code annotated section instituted a 1-year residency requirement for welfare aid, violating Shapiro versus Thompson. Both lower courts in California affirmed that violated Shapiro versus Thompson and granted the injunction. I'm sorry. Due to the procedural issue, California's residency requirement never went into effect, creating no justifiable controversy action and no actual issuance for the court to rule on. Whether they receive a waiver from the Secretary of Health or Human Services to set aside Shapiro versus Thompson, making the residency requirement pseudo-legal, the waiver was challenged again, and it's holding that the state court and the Secretary of HHS had not adequately considered public comment on the issues. This is about welfare. Yeah,
No,
this is about
are you reading
the
this?
welfare system and the ability
Now
for
look,
people. You cannot stop people from traveling. I don't see anything in here about
decision.
a driver's license.
This look the decision of the court. The
Right, she has
court
the right to
look
go places.
look the court reaffirmed the right to travel under the 14th Amendment Privilege and Immunities Clause in Suez versus Roe. So they conferred it to another
Right,
case. But
right,
the conclusion of a case like that would be violating her right to travel. It have something to do
exactly.
with the welfare, but it's violating her right to travel.
It's
It's
all
violating
about that
people's right to
because
travel.
the reason why we can't prohibit her from being able to travel or to go to another state is because then they're saying once she gets to that state, she has to establish some type of residency. And what they're saying is that if she doesn't have that residency, she wouldn't get the services needed. And so they're saying you can't say, oh, you can't go to this state and not get the stuff that you need to take care of yourself and your family just because you're not.
Let's set the stage here, because what you're about to hear is not just a courtroom argument, it's a full-blown collision between constitutional law and internet legal mythology. On one side, you have a judge who has heard every variation of these arguments for years. On the other, a defendant who genuinely believes he's uncovered a legal loophole unfolds. Pay attention to how selectively the law is being used, how the judge keeps pulling the conversation back to reality, and how the defendant keeps trying to drag it somewhere else entirely. The tension here isn't loud, it's surgical. And by the end of this, you'll see exactly why courtroom confidence does not equal courtroom competence. Buckle up, because this one escalates quietly, and then all at once.
Aren't, but you're not understanding what their decision was based on. Yes, you have the right to travel, but this is concerning services.
So if I chose to carry a weapon, I will be bearing arms.
If you
But
chose
y'all
to carry a
call it
weapon in the state of in Illinois, that's an automatic. You're not allowed to carry weapons at all in the state of Illinois unless you're a law enforcement officer.
I'm talking
So
about
if you
state of
traveled
Michigan.
over the state lines and you went to Illinois and you tried to carry a gun, they would tell you no.
But that's irrelevant, Your Honor. We're talking about the state of Michigan. I have a right to bear arms, but you will call it receiving and
Exactly.
concealing. But the
Well,
Constitution of
it's
Michigan states that I can bear arms, but we're
because
making
once
something of
again, and
that.
we had this conversation already, the states can make stuff more, the localities can make stuff, they can, and it's a state law anyways, but they can be harsher than the US Constitution, but they can do something that would take away from the US Constitution. So they're not taking away your right to bear arms, they're just putting parameters around that right.
That's kind of irrelevant.
Okay.
And like Murdoch versus Pennsylvania, say no state can convert a secure liberty into a privilege. Our secure liberty, First Amendment is the right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness.
Mhm.
Right to travel throughout the United States of America. I'm relying on the constitutional rights. I'm not just out here willfully nilly like United States versus Bishop.
But you
Who
are,
finds
because you're only taking the part that you want to be applied to you. So you are out here willy-nilly. Because if you
no,
were,
that's
if you
not
were
true.
following, no. If you were following everything, you would want to follow everything and all the rules that were put into place. So all
No,
that
I'm
I'm
following
following,
laws,
you're
not
following
rules.
what you want to follow. And that's no. We talked about how that leads to anarchy. People can't do
That's
whatever they
not
want
true,
to do
Your
just
Honor.
because they
That's
say
not
that I can follow only this. That's no. That's like me coming one day and saying, I want to practice law and I want to be a judge, and I haven't gone through any of the things to become a judge. That's not how it works.
I see how you
I
putting
can't
it,
sit
but
up
that's
here with a
not
fake P number. They wouldn't let me do that.
I see how you putting it, but that's not true. What about Title 18 USC Section 241?
Mr. Williams, do you want a trial on Monday or not? You
Yeah,
can't argue this stuff to the
I want to go to
jury.
trial, but I can't.
Okay. You can't argue this stuff to the jury. You can argue that maybe something, making sure that they didn't check the things. Like, you have to follow the law. I have to treat you as an attorney in that place on Monday. So I have to treat that you know how to practice and go about the way of law. And these different things, like, you can't just give the jury cases and stuff like that. That's not what it's going to be about. And you'll most likely end up with objections that I'll have to sustain, because it's going to be talking about the facts of these particular cases where the officers came today. Attorney Mason will make the argument for, and officers came to testify
What are they testifying
about these different stops,
which is unlawful.
different
Like,
okay. Well, I gave you plenty of time to write a motion about unlawful, and you did not want to. So
that's
now we're
asking
here at the
permission.
trial.
I gave you affidavits stating the facts, which you needed, and
Exactly.
This right here is where things start to sound persuasive if you don't know the background. Shapiro versus Thompson is a real Supreme Court case, and yes, it absolutely dealt with the vehicles. The court wasn't saying states can't regulate behavior, it was saying states can't punish people simply for moving. That distinction matters a lot. And this is a classic tactic: take a legitimate ruling, strip it of context, then stretch it until it covers something it was never meant to address. The judge hears this immediately, which is why she keeps redirecting the conversation back to services, benefits, and residency, not highways and traffic stops. This isn't semantics. This is the entire case.
I'm not driving for gain or profit. I'm going to point A to point B, not violating nobody's rights. I'm just traveling freely, like I'm exercising my constitutional rights. Like Title 18 USC Section 241. Can you look that up?
I let you have a whole hour of time to discuss all of these previously, Mr. Williams. We talked about all of these, and at the end, I made the ruling that the court did have jurisdiction and that the officers could write tickets.
You haven't explained jurisdiction.
I don't have to explain anything. It's not my job to explain it.
But you said you did explain, but you didn't.
But I said I allowed you to explain it. Do you need to pull it up on YouTube?
But the burden is on the prosecutor.
Right, not on me. I'm the court. I just call balls and strikes.
And the prosecutor cannot state how she has jurisdiction.
Okay, Attorney Mason, do you want to state how you have jurisdiction over these matters?
Statute provides us with the jurisdiction over this matter. The statutes and the laws of the court provide us the jurisdiction over these matters.
That's subject.
I am empowered by the state. I am empowered by my bar card, which has been submitted to the state of Michigan. I'm empowered by the city of Detroit.
But she still not stating. I gotta object to that because she's not stating how she has jurisdiction over.
She's telling you it's by the statutes. The statutes that were given.
Statutes is not law.
Okay.
I'm obeying by the law.
So you want us to call them laws? Laws are statutes. They're the same thing. It's just a fancy way of saying laws. Statutes are just a fancy way of saying laws.
Statutes are persuasive. Laws are mandatory.
These are laws. Okay, statutes are laws. It's just a fancy way of saying laws.
Yeah, they derive from the law.
And here it is, the sentence that quietly destroys the argument. The defendant is right about one thing: there is nothing in these cases about driver's licenses. But instead of seeing that as a problem, he treats it like a victory. This is where legal reasoning goes off the rails. Courts don't work on implication by vibes. If a case doesn't address licensing, vehicles, or always has been. This is the point where judges internally sigh, because they know what's coming next, more citations, same mistake. And the defendant doesn't realize yet that he's already lost the room.
At this point, Your Honor, I'm going to
rules and regulations.
I'm going to just make a motion that these matters have already been resolved. That the court has previously stated that the trial was set forth regarding the facts of the incidents that have arisen, and that the witnesses will testify only to the facts regarding the tickets.
What are the facts?
The facts are the things on the ticket. So you have to research the law and find out exactly what each one is to show.
According to Michigan Vehicle Code 257-744A, police officers knowingly.
Okay.
I travel with a passport. My ID been canceled since 2018, so none of that is true.
Just because you cancel your ID, and this is the last argument for today, and then we're just gonna have trial on Monday. Just because you cancel your ID doesn't mean now you have the right to drive in the state of Michigan. That's not the law of this state. When you avail yourselves of the roads, the lights, the streets, the anything. Once you avail, once you take place, once you take part on those items, then you are.
Exchange is the judge doing something incredibly important, and incredibly patient. She's explaining that rights can exist alongside regulations. The Second Amendment analogy is a perfect example. You can have a right and still have boundaries around how that right is exercised. That's not a contradiction, that's Constitutional Law 101. But notice how the defendant keeps labeling this explanation as irrelevant.